this is going to be a really fun best of 3. I think it should be a wild one. It should be an explosive one. But these two names are some of the biggest names we've ever had in StarCraft 2. Top right side, the Korean Zerg player, the one and only DongRaeGu.
Digging these riffs. And in the bottom left here, also from the Afrika Freaks, the Shield of Aya. He is Stats. Appreciate the medal, DreamHack. Thank you very much.
Now, if DongRaeGu wins this entire group, Maynard, which I know is a bit unlikely, do you think it's possible to get the Muslim on the call so he can once again open the interview segment? Be like, what's up, bro? Congratulations with the victory.
All those nights of us just sharing our deepest, darkest thoughts and secrets together, as they did every night for the Bennies and the boys. Yeah, I've never actually seen a closer knit crew than the Muslim and his championship winning team.
Still pisses me off.
What kills me is the whole like. You know, playing you or Pig, and I'm just like, all right, look, we have to try really hard to win 3-1 or it's over. Like, we're going to get that ace match, and that means we're up against Cyril/Rainer, and that is going to be a bad time for all of us. So that was indeed how we went down in that War Chest Team League with Pig's team. But yeah, let's have a look at this game a little bit. You're actually talking about not really being on that stats hype train at the moment, and no one's really talking about stats at the moment. You know who was talking about stats, Rotterdam? Your boy Maynard, 24 hours ago. Because he defeated Solar in the grand final of the Lima League 3-1, with Solar being a cheeky, aggressive boy, and stats showing that he's a defensive god. Still has that.
Yeah, and I actually think that DongRaeGu and Solar are pretty similar Zerg players as well, so I do think that's very relevant you brought that up. Well, I didn't mean that nobody's talking about stats, right? Because obviously stats is, without a doubt, one of the best Protoss players in the world. It's just that we don't really talk about stats when we come into a tournament like this. Like, yeah, I think stats is going to win it. Like, that was a very reasonable thing to say in 2018, in 2017, maybe in parts of 2019, even though that wasn't his best year. But we just don't really have that feeling. I still don't have that feeling at the moment. But what I do think is that stats is always capable of making a very proper run in a tournament. And I can't imagine too many players being incredibly happy of the idea of playing a best of 3 or best of 5 against stats, because they know it's going to be difficult.
Yeah, and DRG is teammates with Stats, of course, would love to have a much easier opponent here for his first best of 3. Would hate to be in the losers match and have to fight back from there. You have to play extra series. And we do have just the first adept here from Stats going across the map for a little bit of look. Stargate opener from him, a very normal opening, and a Stalker to follow up, which feels like every Protoss is doing now these days. It's not about those 2 adepts anymore. It's, you know, there's multiple adepts. It's all about that Stalker next to shoo away that Overlord.
Yeah, since DongRaeGu was forced to take his third base as his natural, things can get a little bit awkward. And he actually took his extractor very early, like way quicker than they normally take it. And I was like, is this going to be something ultra wild in the beginning? But then even when the extractor finished up, DongRaeGu didn't actually start mining yet. So he was just doing that to make sure he can start mining gas whenever he wants. And obviously when the initial drones are a bit more exposed, it is nice to have slightly quicker access to Zergman speed. But he hasn't lost any drones yet, so all of that kind of worked out for DongRaeGu.
And he is reacting to Stargate here, getting the spores up. Not absolutely everywhere, keeping the natural kind of open, but the main and the third are getting some spore crawler protection. And yeah, so it looks like a very regular opener here from Stats, like the most ho-hum Stargate opener in the whole world, just into Oracles. He hasn't picked up that Void Ray card yet. He hasn't realized every other Protoss is doing that at the moment.
That's an early Roach Warren, by the way, by DongRaeGu as well. I just can't really see any use of this Roach Warren on a map like Eternal Empire, so I think it's just maybe one of these things that it fits in his build order and he likes to have quick access to it. Every now and then you see something wild, like single Oracle into Resonating Glaive Adept follow-up. We know that that's not happening. Stats is just going up to 3 bases, but no, I guess a Roach Warren is one of these buildings that he wants to have anyway, and I don't think we have to look too much into it, but I do find it early.
It is indeed. It's weird to get spores as well as that early Roach Warren. Like, if you think you're getting a depth printed, I'm used to seeing it that early, but considering he knows it's Stargate, yeah, I'm with you. It's a little bit strange. 2 Oracle's looking for an angle, but DRG doing a good job mining his probes, or rather his drones so far, just loses 1 there.
It's a lot of Overlords, by the way. 6 Overlords at once after DongRaeGu hit a little bit of a supply block.
Is he about to hit that R button? Like, that is a lot of Overlords. He doesn't have a lot of money, though.
Yeah, and it just doesn't make sense, right? That's not a timing. Like, what are you gonna do? Rally slow roaches to the other side of the map? The only thing it could have possibly been is maybe go for like a roach queen nidus, but that's only really good against certain double target openings, and even then it feels risky, unnecessary. So it seems like DongRaeGu is just playing a macro game. It just may not be the most clean macro game that we've ever seen, but he's still getting there. The beautiful thing of Zerg is that obviously even if you hit a supply block, you can queue up 8, 9, 10 drones afterwards at once. So all of that will work out. And I don't think DongRaeGu is in a terrible position or something.
He just took all of these gases, and Stats is going to see at least one of these here at the third base. So he hasn't got complete information, but with all the gases going down and a layer going down,
Spire.
Usually that means Spire. It can also mean just a lot of Ravages, but yeah, it looks like Spire from DRG, which is how he used to play this matchup all the time.
And this is definitely not a bad map for it. Now, I gotta say, look, he made a few more links than we normally see. You know, just to defend against the 2 adepts that could have potentially tried to snipe a couple drones. Didn't really get any return of investment on those links either. So even though this may have seemed like a relatively passive game where both players are macroing up, I definitely favor Stats' position. It just feels that everything was a bit cleaner. Well, Maynard, it seems like we've got our answer. It's not going to be Spire. It's going to be an infestation pit. So then we can probably expect some Swarm Host Nidus memes.
I actually feel you might be right, but I've been seeing some of the Korean Zergs, including Solar last night, go for a Hydra Den a little bit later and go into like Hive and Lurker. Seems like the Korean Zergs are really loving that right now, but that does seem strange at this point with that infestation pit so quickly.
And that's a possibility as well. We've seen quite a few of the European Zergs also leaning towards Lurker play in this matchup, especially because the Blink Stalker became really popular again, right? Like suddenly all the Protoss players are like, yeah, we're gonna make Blink Stalkers all day long. And there is a reason why Lil Bao did not win a whole bunch of tournaments in Legacy of the Void. And that's because Lurkers are very good against Blink Stalkers, so you could be onto something there. And there's the Hive, so Maynard, you're just a god today.
Mate, this is the Lima League broadcast getting me that window into the current Korean meta. And I'll tell you what, that Hive Lurker, we've seen, I mean, Rainer's in this group. He's one of the biggest proficient guys. That's you know, you see anyone use Lurkers as good as Rainer, you are going to have a tough time if you're a Protoss. And I feel like DRG is certainly not far behind in terms of utilizing Lurkers to the nth degree. So this is a window for Stats where I feel like his army is going to be a little bit more powerful. But, of course, when the Hive is done and the Lurkers get that range upgrade, and, of course, when they get that burrow upgrade, it's very, very, very tough to engage that.
It's funny to see that many slow zealots on the bottom side of the map right now. Stats is just using those slow zealots to go up to 4 bases. I gotta say, normally these are not the kinds of games where I'm really getting strong DongRaeGu vibes. And I'm like, yeah, DongRaeGu, he's a god with Lurkers and playing Hive against Protoss. Maybe he feels there's no other way to do things right on Eternal, because it is very difficult to just attack with basic units, as he is applying a little bit of pressure for the first time. But I think it's safe to say all of this is fake pressure, because of course he just wants to buy time to get Hydras out and get up to Lurker.
Yeah, there's no giant commitment here. He's just flexing in front of Stats, maybe forcing him to overreact and make a mistake. Maybe some units aren't on hold position, he can pick them off from the pack or something like that. This little army, this little skirmish here from DRG not going too well. His roaches are turning engaging, but up against +1 attack Stalkers with Blink.
Yeah, that's quite a few roaches being donated, but you can also say that frees up some supply for more Hydras and more Lurkers down the line. When was the last time Stats got a good scout in the main? Well, he technically scouted everything. So Stats knows that there is a Hive. He knows that there is a Lurker Den being built. I'm surprised that he's just relying this much on static defenses. I guess he's just like, you know what? Running to the other side of the map, I've seen that go wrong more than once. You know, you think you hit the timing, but all of a sudden the Zerg player is maxed out. They're coming in from every angle. I'm just gonna sit back. If you want to play late game, I'll play late game with you.
And this is where I feel like DRG is probably going to be a little bit stronger. His stats is, you know, he's Mr. Macro. He's the late game Protoss. He's like the current guy that kind of flies that flag for the late game macro Protoss like Rain used to back in the day. But, you know, this Lurker style is so powerful at the moment. DRG is so good at it. And I have seen Stats have trouble with it. Oh, Storm there, a little bit of engagement off creep. Whereas if DRG was... Oh, just two Lurkers. Easy pick off.
Yep, DongRaeGu actually mis-rallying 2 Lurkers in the center of the map and a Hydra as well. I mean, I'm actually really favoring these kinds of games for Stats. Like, I did believe that this was going to be a difficult series for him, but I just felt that DongRaeGu is going to apply a lot of pressure. in this game, there is no pressure being applied. It's just like, all right, maybe now with adaptive talents on the way, a couple of drop lords. That is actually really cool. I'm not really thinking about it, but that is obviously a proper way to get value out of your lurkers. But that's another lurker going down. That's 3 already. And what has DongRaeGu really killed in this game? Look at the units lost, by the way. 1 Stalker, 1 Observer against all that Zerg.
That's some efficiency right there, man. Any Protoss would be happy with that scorecard. But yeah, of course, we haven't gotten into the meat and potatoes of this game just yet, where the Zerg really commits when they've just got their upgrades and they're all maxed out. That tier 3 burrow speed upgrade for the Lurkers is not too far away. And with that Overlord drop, it could potentially see some Lurkers and some Mineral Lines. I haven't seen a Baneling Nest yet from DRG, so it's just all about the Hydra and Lurker drop by the looks of things.
Yep, there are a couple oracles here that attack the army. Well done. The swarm's not really connecting with too many units. 1 High Templar does get picked off. At the same time, DongRaeGu is going to try to make some magic happen on the right side, but there are so many cannons here. A couple of High Templars left behind as well, landing good storms on top of the Roaches and Ravagers. Love to see one more storm.
Stats is getting a little bit stretched thin here defensively at that 4th base. Looks like DRG is starting to make some ground, but now the Zealot warp in, he's going to be able to fight that back. The Natural's where the Lurkers are. Another couple getting picked off there by the Carrier reinforcement. Shield batteries trying to hold that line with the Zealots. Yeah, he's going to cut through this. Zealots are a little way off of having +3, but this is enough Protoss.
It's more than enough Protoss. Stats during all of this did wipe in a couple of Zealots on the top left side with that Prism. Could have maybe used these Zealots a bit earlier, because I know they were chilling there for a while. And obviously you want to go for these kinds of run-bys while there is a lot of action happening on your side of the map as well. But, I mean, Stats weathered that storm without any real issues. Of course, DongRaeGu does have a big economy. He is getting double Spires. We could see a couple of Corruptors to try to potentially take care of the Carriers. But Maynard, this has to be a little bit scary right now for DongRaeGu.
Yeah, absolutely. There's quite a high intercept account here. There's High Templar with tons of energy. I would love for Stats to be continuing to get his ship weapon upgrades. This is one thing that I'm thinking is missing, but otherwise I think Stats looks so solid. The Lurkers now going for the run-by is very terrifying. If you don't have a good number of units to fight back these Lurkers, they will just cut through that static defense like a hot knife through butter, and they are doing exactly that right now. That Archon's going to go away, and Stats is going to come back with his army to actually get rid of these Lurkers, or he's going to lose this 4th.
Yep, and at the same time, Lurkers are running into the main base as well, but there are a couple of Carriers still there to keep that Natural safe. And Stalker's indeed getting a rather awkward fight there, but in the end, Stats is going to clean up Lurkers in the Natural at the 4th base as well, or 5th base even. And, I mean, DongRaeGu has killed some units. I don't really know where. I mean, we can see that Stats has lost 8,000 resources in this game. This could potentially get some damage done. Getting the Cybercore would be big here, Maynard.
And getting the Oracles would be nice as well, as there would be no revelations for these Lurkers in the Natural, and he gets both the Oracles. There's +2 ship weapons as well, potentially being denied. DRG's found himself a lovely little angle here. There's a revelation on some of the Lurkers, but not all of them, so 3 of them can remain undetected. He does have an Observer, though, of course, he could bring in.
It's actually really starting to make this magic happen. Now, all of these Carriers lost their Interceptors, and all of a sudden, it feels that Stats doesn't have much to work with here. He is investing in a Mothership, but that's going to take a long time before it's out. This is actually going to be so difficult for Stats to even engage into. And this isn't even everything that DongRaeGu has. Like, it's a big part of his army, but this isn't even everything, Maynard.
Stats has 1 Observer here. There's still an Overseer. Stats needs to get rid of it to keep that Observer alive. In comes the Storms. Some lovely Storms from Stats, of course. The Observer getting him that detection there on those Lurkers. He's also lost his Robo facility, so he can't make any more. This is very important that he keeps that alive to actually have a chance to fight back here.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, the majority of the carries are out of Interceptors, so even if the army supply looks impressive, Stats has 111 supply, well, that doesn't mean much if these carries are not fighting. The Mothership is very tanky, so maybe that can save the day for a while, but look at these Hydras with no respect for the Mothership. They just run into it. Stats might barely be able to hang in there, but DongRaeGu has been outmining Stats severely for the last couple minutes in this game.
Yeah, there was a point in this game, and I didn't mention it, but I definitely did see it, where DRG was over 90 drones. So he's been very, very healthy economically. There's been some run-bys from Stats, of course, but the real damage has been happening on Protoss' side of the map. No Natural here, and also tech largely sort of reset here and there on some of those tech paths. No Robo facility, no Observer production. no money here. With only 49 probes to work with, you can't keep producing 3 carries at once for stats.
Nope, you can't even really produce interceptors of a 52 probe economy. That's going to be very painful. We can see that some of these carriers are still not maxed out. And I think the biggest loss of all of them was perhaps that cybernetics score. Even though +2 wasn't even like 30% done, upgrades are key for carriers. 1-0 carriers, simply not that intimidating. +2 carriers are like a million times better. I don't really know how it works, but it's amazing what +2 can achieve compared to +1. And this now almost becomes an all-in for stats, as crazy as that sounds.
I think you're absolutely right. I think this feels extremely all-in. He's got a lot of energy on these High Templar, of course, to try and keep these carriers alive against the Corruptors. He's catching some of those spores. There's the Corruptors catching the reinforcement carriers coming fresh out of the Stargates from stats.
That's a really sweet move. You don't see that very often. There's one more carrier flying into all of these Corruptors. That is just a sick move by DongRaeGu. He just picked up 3 carriers by moving his Corruptors towards the natural of stats. And he's just kind of avoiding the army. And the stats have an observer here, Maynard. Stats has no more observers.
He's lost it. He's lost it. And without the observer, these Archons actually can't help the carriers anymore. Only the carrier is safe here.
Corruptors are going to try to take out a Nexi on the other side of the map. Maybe multiple Nexus even. Why the hell not? And Stats knows that he really is on the clock at this point because he's already economically behind. Losing another base is incredibly painful. He does have enough damage to fight these Hydras, Maynard. I do feel that DongRaeGu eventually needs to fight the carriers because he's losing a lot of his anti-air right now.
Yeah, these Corruptors need to come and assist because these Lurkers don't really have anything to do until they catch the ground army. In come the Corruptors, but there are Archons parked under the carriers here.
Wow.
Storms are massive. Oh my god, so many of those Corruptors deep in the orange.
Okay, DongRaeGu made this incredibly complicated for himself. He just lost all his queens, lost the majority of his Hydras, if not all of them. Well, he has a couple there, but now the Corruptors are so beat up. Is it possible that Stats still steals the game right now with just +1 carriers?
I mean, I feel like he's got the units. He's got another revelation with those oracles coming back. In come the Corruptors. Are going to pick 1 carrier up on the back of the pack there. But 3 or 4 Corruptors go down in the meantime. Another re-engagement there from DRG, but the Archons are zoning. Another Storm would be great here for Stats. I'm not sure he's got it, though. His carriers are starting to get thinned out.
I almost feel like I would have loved to see the Interceptors fight the Corruptors rather than like the Spore Crawlers and stuff, because all those Corruptors were so low on HP, and it really did feel that the carriers could have done a phenomenal job against those NTR units. The Archons were trying to get in range, but they were just kind of derping high ground, low ground, hogging walls, and I think that DongRaeGu has sort of weathered the storm and survived.
Literally.
Yes. The problem is that Stats never rebuilt the cybernetics core, right? When I say that he builds the cybernetics core, but eventually these +1 carriers, Maynard, they are just becoming less and less intimidating, especially after losing like 5 or 6 in the last 2 minutes.
Now, what do you do about this single Lurker here with its +3 attack in your mineral line? When you got all of your units to the other side of the map to try and handle all these Hydras, all these Corruptors, and Stats is still trying to pick off those Corruptors. Obviously, if he can get rid of these Corruptors somehow, that would be a dream scenario for him. He can start to really commit, even over Spores. He can just cut them through with the Interceptors, with the Archons. Oh, big storm there on the Hydra pack. Those are fresh Hydras for DRG, but it looks like he's finally starting to get those carriers down. There's that full Interceptor carrier getting picked off as well. And there it is. DRG takes game number 1. And that was a wild one, Roddy. That was fun.
Yeah, I felt the pace of this game was really odd, because at first, Stats is playing just a perfect game. He kills like 45 units. He lost 1 Stalker and an Observer, I believe it was, or a Stalker and a Probe. And it really felt that he had a perfect read on everything that was happening, because he did scout. And he's like, all right, this is how I'm going to deal with it. I'm going to split up my army a little bit, have a couple static defenses here and there, and then I'm going to go into carriers. You already mentioned that he waited a long time with starting +2, and then he even ended up losing the Cybercore, of course. It just really felt that the carriers never did what he expected them to do. And if upgrades are, you know, to blame there, perhaps a little bit, but I think it mostly went wrong when he just completely underestimated that army that ran into his natural, because that army just did way more damage than I think it was supposed to do.
Yeah, I almost dismissed it when the Observer kind of panned over that army in the natural, because I'm like, oh, he's got 2 carriers here. There's an Oracle just next door. He'll just he'll drop a revelation on these Lurkers, and you know those 16 Interceptors will clean it up. But no, those Lurkers actually sat there. They picked off with the Hydra's assistance, of course. It wasn't just the Lurkers. Picked off the Cybercore, like you mentioned. That +2 was denied, and then he managed to create himself sort of a path where he could continue to just rally more and more and more Zerg. And then he was in the main all of a sudden with 10 Hydras picking off a mothership, you know, which gave Stats some very critical time. time for that mothership to pop out and give him like a few seconds. But by then, his natural was gone and his infrastructure was in tatters. So that was definitely the tipping point there for DRG.
Yep, I think it was another game where the investment into the mothership didn't really pay off. I think that's something that maybe is worth bringing up as well. It felt that Stats was in control of the game, and obviously, you know, he was keeping up when it came to army. Perhaps quality, the army was even better, but a lot of his supply was often in production, right? If you're building 3 carriers and a mothership, I mean, that's like 20-something supply, 24, 26 supply. That's not actually there. And yeah, then all of a sudden the Zerg does show up in your main base and things just get really awkward. Anyways, pretty fun, interesting game 1, but this man has taken the lead. The Korean Zerg player, he's up 1-0. It is DongRaeGu.
And up at the top right here, currently down the series, looking to tie it up here on Everdream. He is a freak Stats. This is actually like it's so funny. Yesterday, Rotterdam, I saw a situation where the Zerg ignored the natural completely and just took this base for their first expansion, and there was no probe, just because of this meta right now, where every Protoss seems to do this. This 12th probe just goes across the map to block the hatchery, and Zergs have been just defaulting, taking that base instead.
Look how quickly, once again, DongRaeGu takes his gas, by the way. That is so quick. Now, last game, even when that gas finished up, he didn't start mining gas. This time, he puts 1 drone on it immediately, but that's just it for now, so I guess he's not going to be too cheesy here. I find this pretty fascinating, because that is like a pre-1 minute gas, and you don't see that very often.
Yeah, you're quite right. I would have missed that if I didn't have your keen eye and your massive, sexy brain. So.
I've just been all in a lot in my life, Maynard. I'm traumatized.
Right,
From now on, I always see when they take their extractor. It's amazing what Zerg can do when they take their extractor at like 1 minute sharp or 1:11. Like all of a sudden, things that are very easy to hold when they do it off like a 1:10 gas are almost impossible to hold if you're not paying attention to it. If they take it 10 seconds quicker, so.
Poor Ruddy. You click on the extractor hit points, with 1 pip or with with enough squares there in the hit points of the extractor, you're like, okay, this is going to be a tough game.
Yeah, especially on Submarine and Everdream. I'm like, all right, we need a forge. And then obviously they just pull them out of gas and they're droning up. And then they're like, Roddy, why are you building so many cannons? It's like, it's coming, okay? It's kind of like the Big Gabe clip of Reddit yesterday. No, no. I'm sitting there at home. I'm like, no. It's like nothing's coming, but.
Oh, man. That's one of the worst feelings in the whole world when you sit there and you like quote unquote know when all in's coming and you're just like, all right, anytime now. Then you go over the replay and you're like, wow, he was 12 workers ahead 4 minutes into the game. He just took a third. I'm like, ah!
Now Everdream is obviously the map when it came for or when it's all about the Resonating Glaive Adept opening, but Stats actually not going for it, and I'm very surprised by it. Now, DongRaeGu does have a reputation where he's pretty damn good against this build. It reached the point where a lot of Zerg players started copying his response, but Stats opening up Stargate and opening up with the Void Ray as well, Maynard.
Yeah, he's picking up a little bit of that Void Ray action. Did see it a little bit against Solar yesterday in the Elim League, of course. Check out that tournament. It's a good time. But the Void Ray is actually, this Stats isn't as wild as nice, so I'm not expecting like multiple Void Rays like that game. I'm expecting maybe 1, maybe 2, just to force back Overlords. It's a very, very good anti-Overlord unit. Yeah, and he goes to the Oracle next.
Yeah. So this is kind of what the Phoenix used to do, right? Where people used to open up with just 1 Phoenix, clear the Overlords, and then they would just go into a normal game. But since it's easier to build a Void Ray right now, it takes less supply, it builds quicker, and it's a little bit cheaper as well. It just makes sense to actually invest in a single Void Ray rather than a single Phoenix, because at least a single Void Ray is going to help you go up to 3 bases as well, where a single Phoenix doesn't really do much for you against a bunch of Zerglings.
I like that move there from Stats as well, getting fresh with those 3 Adepts, knowing the Void Ray is just behind him, and he's going to just muscle those Lings away from the natural so he can take his 3rd base, get that pylon down, and create himself a little bit of a nest for those Adepts to keep it safe against the Lings of DRG, who is just droning right now. This is a very normal start for both players.
Yeah, I mean, Kalara's made it seem like he made the craziest prediction in the history of StarCraft 2 when he said, I'm gonna think that DongRaeGu takes this 2-1. I was like, James, that's That's not that bad of a prediction, you know. He had a pretty good run in the GSL. He's been on fire lately, you know. But yeah, it's actually starting to look just like a very standard series so far. And yeah, based upon that previous game, where I actually felt that DongRaeGu could have executed his build order a little bit cleaner, perhaps, than he actually did it. This is starting to look pretty promising, I guess.
Yeah. Oracle got jumped into the main base, by the way. Observer missed it a little bit. It was just a revelation in the main, and the Void Ray tried to attack the third base, but nothing really came of it. We do have the Robo Forge Twilight Council going down, which means obviously Stats is transitioning into a ground army. Lair, Roach Warren +1 there for DRG, just once again looking for a Roachling-based Ravager army on the ground. As Stats goes immediately into charge, not even bothering with Blink here. That definitely used to be the, like, at the moment, it feels like Blink's a lot more popular. But going to charge +1 and Templar Archives just feels a little old school.
Yeah, I feel like the more popular the Stalker became, the more popular the Lurker became. And maybe Stats like, you know what, I used to not struggle that much with Lurkers. And I know they got that range upgrade and everything, but maybe we can just start pulling Zerg players apart again with some good old multi-prism, lots of Zealots, Charge, Archons, Immortals, and then some Quick Storm perhaps as well. DongRaeGu has not really seen what's been happening, but he's been running around with Zerglings, and he has been trying to catch a glimpse of which kinds of units are being warped in, and you know, if things are being produced from a Robo potentially. Could have seen the Prism, just barely missed the Prism there twice, but I think he's got a pretty good idea of what's going on.
DRG, I think, just with the Link, saw the Prism and the 2 Archons there, so he's got a really good idea. And I actually feel like technology-wise, I really like where Stats is at. Like you mentioned, Storm could be a thing here with the Templar Archives, and DRG is going, you know, towards that Hydra, towards the Lurkers, and already having Storm, Archons, and Charge is a good start to be able to handle that army. It's not the, you know, the be-all and end-all for dealing with Lurkers, but it's definitely the start of a response, and I like that.
And obviously taking the base with the Rich Vespian guys, if we all know that that comes in very handy. Archons are like, well, I don't think we want to get too deep here, but we're going to take care of a Spore Crawler, so that's a little victory. These are not truly the victories you hope for when you send 2 Archons in a Prism to the other side of the map. But right now, for Stats, the most important thing is just keep DongRaeGu on his side of the map. And if we can get something, that'd be awesome.
Oh my God,
Queen goes down, but the Prism is taking so much damage, but now almost gets the second Queen as well. That worked out well, but Maynard, that Storm thing is sticking, and it's already more than halfway done.
Yeah, that is a nice quick storm here in this PvZ for Stats. Damn, 2/3 of the way done now, and DRG coming forward sees that 4th base. Stats feels like he's spinning out of control here. Like, this is a really, really good macro game from Stats so far, and he hasn't really taken anything from DRG as far as, like, run-bys or attacks are being concerned. He didn't have to worry about any of them because of how passive he's been.
All right, do you think that we're going to see some Drop-A-Lord play, like heavy Drop-A-Lords? Because I feel that if you're playing these kinds of games on Everdream and you're not going into Hive, then you gotta find openings somewhere. But it's really hard to just rush Roach Hydra into like Archon, Static Defenses, Immortals, and Storm. So there's gotta be like some mass Drop-A-Lord play coming in soon. Otherwise, I'm not exactly sure how DongRaeGu thinks he's going to win the fight.
Good scoop here on those Roaches. Ravager's trying to save them with the Vials, but a little bit too little too late. So nice 4 Roaches there just for energy, 4 Stats. And he has Storm, he's got High Templars. Each one of them has some bad weather inside of them. They got that 75 energy ready. And he's got a Revelation on this sort of a wraparound the DRG's going for, who has a ton of units. And here we are, Stats trying to fight back at those shield batteries. High Templar moving forward to drop Storms in that north flank. The south flank, though, a bit with force fields. He doesn't have too many Immortals here, but he does have an overcharged shield battery, and he does have a Prism. Can Stats juggle? Oh my God, that Archon with the overcharged shield battery can last for 1,000 years. And it's doing exactly that. Stats fighting back, but DRG with a long line of Zerg units.
Yeah, I think with the cannons finishing up, Stats is going to be okay, but I gotta say, that looked really scary for a split second, especially when one of the Archons went down almost immediately, and it was out of range of that overcharged battery. But the fact that Stats was able to hold there is massive, Maynard, because right now he's up 10 workers. Look at the third base as well. I love that cannon positioning. I haven't really seen that yet, but I think that's cute. We've got batteries in the back as well that could heal up those cannons. I mean, at this point, Stats is in a magnificent position.
And this is where he really shines. Against an aggressive Zerg, he is just unbreakable. DRG is heading towards Lurkers, though, and we know how good that unit can be. So, of course, it's not all done yet, but Stats certainly in a really dominant position here, on his way having plus to attack. A nice big power spike for his army. That Archon can get picked off with Bile spam, but no Biles off cooldown.
It's so cool to still see the Oracle fly around as well and just drop revelations non-stop. Memes aside, that actually became a spell that requires a little more skill right now, right? Like in the old days, you tag it once and it felt like you saw the army for the next 2 minutes. These days, it wears off pretty quickly, but it's still very nice, and it's good to see these kinds of guys just renew that revelation over and over again. Stats is even already transitioning Maynard into Fleet Beacon, 2 more Stargates as well. He's just not worried at all about the composition that DongRaeGu is running around with at this point.
And he's not getting blinders on either. He's thinking about the plan. He knows, he's looking at the clock. He's like, all right, you know, it's Lurker o'clock. It's Hive o'clock. Everything that's dangerous from the Zerg is going to be coming soon. The late game tier 3 stuff is coming soon. Time to get to my own tier 3 and be ahead of him in that regard. And he absolutely is. This is a much more comfortable game here, the stats. Lurker's coming out, but I think we're going to see carrier production in the meantime. So it feels so good to see the Protoss going to carriers as Lurkers are just finishing morphing.
Oh, yeah, those Lurkers were actually almost in a very awkward spot. They don't have adaptive talent yet. And obviously they don't have their range upgrade yet either. A couple of Zealots are storming into one of the bases of DongRaeGu on the left side, but DongRaeGu did have a lot of road. Say again?
I think Stats can break those Lurkers, but he's just being very, very careful here. He's got a lot of Immortals, Archons, and Storms, but he's just trying not to throw his units away.
Once again, rushes into the mothership too. I'm not a fan of that. But maybe with the current composition, hiding some of those High Templars, I'll forgive him, Maynard.
Yeah. Rotterdam is StarCraft 2's darling, but he's not a champion for the mothership, that's for damn sure.
Never. And a lot of Zergs really hate it. They're like, Rotterdam doesn't know what he's talking about. It's really good. I'll never get on board.
He can cast Time Warp, guys. I mean, Prince, of course, was the guy that made the mothership popular again, I feel like, for a hot minute. That offensive recall from...
I mean, M. Canning as well, right? In
DreamHack, of course, in the NA. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that DongRaeGu is making this game go on right now is just great news for him, because it really did feel that he was incredibly committed with his Roach Hydra attack. Like, you don't often see Zerg players being down 10, 12 workers against their Protoss counterpart. So, you know, if he's able to survive a little bit longer, maybe we get a couple of Vipers, and then all of a sudden, this is a completely different game again. And, you know, when you said you felt that Stats could have engaged those Lurkers, I felt maybe he just felt he didn't have to, and he just lost a bunch of units on the left side. But I would like to see Stats get a little more aggressive soon, because he was in such a beautiful position, man.
Yeah, and you know, you're maxed out, you got a bank. It's time to get out there and do something. The Spires are on the way for the Zerg. You've got carriers, and the only way the Zerg can deal with it at the moment is for Hydras. And you already have Storm. So it's one of those things where Stats does have a better army at the moment. And he should know that with Revelations, but he's still being so painfully careful.
Yeah, I mean, DongRaeGu is maxed out, but he still has 8 Roaches in the mix and 14 Zerglings, maybe not really the units he wants. On top of that, there's quite a few Queens, but the Lurker count is getting pretty damn high at this point. We currently have 8 Spore Crawlers on the map. That's nothing unbreakable, but hey, you know, it starts with 8 Maynard, and we blink twice, and all of a sudden it's 28 Spore Crawlers. And then the Vipers start abducting those carriers. I feel that Stats definitely could have already closed out this game, or at least get himself in a much better position, but he's playing this very careful. Once again, didn't start +2 air weapons, by the way, on his carriers. I kind of hate to see it.
Yeah, I mean, you got to, especially considering he's got the cash for it, you want to see those upgrades non-stop churning away. You would have, you know, +3 immediately up to +2. He certainly can afford it. DRG is going for the last upgrade there for the Lurkers. The Lurkers have just reached maximum potential, I mean, without +3 attack. And then once that's done, they are the best unit in this matchup. But the Corruptors are on the way. Stats still feels like he's got the better army for now. As when the Corruptor count gets higher and that Spore count gets higher, like you mentioned. It doesn't take long for that Spore Crawler, jungle, I guess, to become a forest.
Maybe a recall is going to get used here, because I don't really think that Stats wants to lose all of his cannons and batteries here, but one carrier is actually going to push it back. DongRaeGu is taking the wrong path, really wants to get one of the carriers. Overcharged batteries are amazing, though. Keep that carrier alive. I gotta say, with the skin, sometimes it's hard to see, like, how many Roaches, how many Hydras are there, really, right? It's like, oh, why is half the army not shooting, man?
Yeah. I'm with you on that, actually. The Roach and the Hydra is a little bit different. I always look out for, like, those big blades, I guess, that the Roach has on its head. That's how I can tell the difference. Those big black things on top of its head. But it feels like almost like having the Forged skin as a Protoss when you got the Immortals and the Stalkers together. This Archon's keen. This Archon is keen, man. He wants a piece of this. He got a bit more than he could chew.
Alright, Stats is working with double cybernetics core right now, and I am kind of happy to see that. But I feel like at this point, everything that happened in the first 5, 6, 7 minutes of the game, not that important anymore, right? Because DongRaeGu has been maxed out for a while. I feel like he's been resetting his army so he can get better units. We have 2 Vipers at the moment. I personally think like it doesn't hurt to have a few more, right? Because what if one of them gets feedback? Instead, it's the mothership that gets abducted here. A lot of storms will land, but well, that was the 400 minerals, 400 gas. At least one of the Vipers did go down, you know.
Yeah, they got a time warp there. That time warp's a super good spell, you know. The Lurkers were shooting slightly slower against those High Templars, which they still killed. I don't know. I'm trying to do something here for the mothership apologists. I'm trying to help.
The funny thing is that they always remake it immediately, right? And I guess the one thing you can say, Maynard, is that if your mothership gets abducted, at least your carriers are not getting abducted. You know what I mean?
True, true. Yeah, the Vipers just used to abduct energy. That's right. But you were talking about the game sort of being, you know, the good work is being undone for Stats, and I kind of agree, but I also think that Stats is in still a lot more comfortable of a spot than he was last game. He has a much better economy still. He's got a huge bank, and all of that he didn't have last game compared to DRG. He does have that one Nexus in trouble. Ooh, big engagement here at the front. One yoink on that carrier. Does get picked off.
I don't know, man. We do have a fight on the bottom right side as well. Rico is going to get used. Stats is not going to lose that game. At least he does have better upgrades on the carrier, but last game we didn't have to worry about Vipers. We didn't have to worry about a whole bunch of Spore Crawlers. We didn't have to worry about all those Corruptors he had either. And that's why I was truly loving his position last game. At this point, you can say it's a matter of execution, right? Who gets the better trades, who gets the better engagements. But I do feel that if the Corruptors get max upgrades, which is still going to take a little while, then I love the carrier. I mean, everybody knows I love the carrier. But I don't really love the carry anymore if the Corruptors get 3-3 upgrades. Then with Vipers and Spore Crawlers, I actually kind of prefer the Zerg army.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a carrier hater personally, but when it has a bunch of High Templar underneath it, I do think it's an extremely strong army and very hard for the Zerg to engage, especially if you're on point with your feedbacks on those interceptors, rather the Vipers.
Yeah, I know you hate the carry. I feel like we have this discussion every offline event. We have to. I'm gonna try to convince you carriers are good, and you always tell me that if you want to lose, you make carriers.
Well, you can beat me with them, but people at my level can't beat me with them. Not yet, anyway. No, we'll see. We're climbing. We're climbing. Oh, I like the spam on the Stargates here for Stats. So if he loses a bunch of carriers, he can make 7 at once.
Good feedback. Excellent feedback on one of the Vipers. That was the Viper that was closest to the Protoss army as well, so that could have potentially landed and abduct. That didn't happen. Taking a look at the units lost resource tab, we can see that DongRaeGu has lost 4k resources more. But once again, all of that is not that important. This Hydra army is super trapped, by the way.
Yeah, that's not coming home alive, that's for damn sure. Mothership coming down to get revenge. Taking out those Hydras. It was pretty sick how one High Templar just made them retreat all by itself. It was a shield battery and a High Templar in a dream. I love it.
Get out of here.
Now, this is a tough position. This is a tough nut to crack for Stats. That's everything DRG. That's scary. The Vipers are here, the Corruptors are here, the Spores, the Lurkers. There's no breaking that.
It's actually really cool to even see a couple of Ultras being added, because eventually some Protoss players, they start making ridiculous amounts of carriers. If 2 of the carriers do get abducted, but the Storms actually keep these carriers alive. A couple of feedbacks landed as well. Good job there by Stats. But I really like having a couple of Ultras on the ground. They are so tanky. Carriers really struggle taking care of Ultras. So even if they do finally clean them up eventually, at that point, there is a good chance that the Corruptors have already taken care of the carriers. So it seems silly, but I actually really like Ultras.
I completely agree with you. I mean, the only downside I feel like for these Ultras at the moment is that Stats has actually managed to keep these Immortals alive. A lot of Protosses would actually throw the Immortals away at this point to make space for the carrier or for more High Templar. But having these Immortals alive actually gives them a lot more of a shot at dealing with those Ultras. Less chance of losing those High Templar. There's that dead carrier. Finally, the DRG picks it off.
No!
Oh, High Templar!
It would have been an expensive donation, even though Stats has the bank and has the economy to make a couple of donations here and there. So a single carrier that's get abducted isn't that bad. A single High Templar that runs into Lurkers, all of that doesn't matter that much. This could be a much bigger engagement though. A couple of those Immortals have really been beat up. The Mothership is once again gonna get abducted and killed. We do see a big storm coming in on the right side. But Maynard, there are still so many Spore Crawlers around, no?
There are indeed, but this position of DRG was opened up for a little bit there. And he actually did lose some Vipers, and he has a lot of hit points missing on his Corruptors, so it feels like maybe these carriers can get a lot more done here.
Well, he's going in real deep. There is one lurker killing a whole bunch of probes on the right side, and it was incredibly funny to see one High Templar run through the middle of the map. There were 5 Ultras there, and they just looked at that High Templar. It's like, yeah, I guess you can join up with your friends. It's
Breakfast.
all good.
Stats are getting closer to having those 3-3-3 upgrades as well. He's very, very close, but so is the 3-3 for the Corruptors of DRG, and you mentioned that they start to get super scary at that point. What's the Corruptor count right now for DRG? 23, about to be 26. That's a lot of Corruptors.
And only 3 High Templars on the map at the moment. One of them does have 2 storms, I believe. So basically, we're looking at 4 storms. I gotta say, that's not the amount of storms I think you're really hoping for. We complimented stats on keeping those carrier or those ultras. Damn it, the Immortals alive before.
There you go.
Now those have kind of been replaced by Zealots, and Zealots don't really do the same job, right? So I do feel that Stats' army actually became a bit worse after all those fights.
And I'm glad to see him making Immortals again, as Wizard sees, because it's an expensive unit, but he has the bank, and why not? You know, there's Immortals are the biggest anti-Ultra unit you have as a Protoss. You know, apart from Void Rays, of course, because the Ultras can't fight back. But yeah, these Zealots just getting chased into the main by 4 Ultras, which is, you know, great. Those Ultras aren't trying to break stats or anything like that. But it feels like both players are kind of gone, all right, time to disengage. We're going back to our sides of the Octagon. Gonna get a breather, have a drink of water, have our stitches, have our cuts dried up, and then we'll get back in the middle for the next round. It's taking a breather here.
And let's get some energy on the spellcasters, right? Because it does really feel that this is often a dance between the High Templars and the Vipers. If the Vipers are able to just abduct carrier after carrier, things will always go bad for the Protoss. But if Protoss is able to land the craziest storms on all the Corruptors that are clumped up and then a couple feedbacks, and all of a sudden things can go very bad for the Zerg.
You are not wrong. You are not wrong. I like that also DRG is throwing in some Infestors here as well. Neural is done. So with Neurals, you can grab, generally not carriers, but you can grab Archons and turn them against the carriers, turn them against the Interceptors. All that sort of stuff is pretty nice. Even though the Infestor will normally die, it can make or break an engagement. So a good engagement, potentially give DRG some more feedbacks on the Vipers. Good start to this fight for stats.
Yep, especially because those were the only 2 Vipers that were out on the map. 2 of them, 2 more just popped, but obviously they don't really have that much energy yet. Look at the upgrade tab, by the way. I feel like, does DongRaeGu have almost every single upgrade you could potentially get? Yeah. It's going like 60% into the screen.
Yeah, you hit the upgrade tab and the Zerg literally has everything, I think, except for the Ultralisk Speeder. Oh, no, he does have the Ultralisk
he has that
upgrade. There it is, yeah. Oh, wow, he has absolutely everything.
No burrow.
Oh, what a scrub. Clearly, that'll be the reason he loses this game. And he's on his way to having +3 melee as well. And he's done.
Yep.
There it is.
He's got 41 Spore Crawlers, and he's building 6 additional Spore Crawlers. And he's now starting to add more and more Infestors into the mix as well. I mean, Stats is the Shield of Fire, but I do feel that sometimes he could perhaps make things a bit more complicated on himself. Because Protoss against Zerg is a funny matchup, right? Where it's like, first you worry about the Zerg all-ins, then Protoss can all-in, then Zerg has strong mid-game timings. But then I feel that Protoss has a proper window where the Protoss army is incredibly powerful. But if you're just sitting at home, then you're obviously not really capitalizing on that more powerful army that you have. And now all of a sudden, the Zerg army is starting to look terrifying. And I'm not exactly sure how Stats is going to get amazing fights. He's maxed out. He's got money in the bank, Maynard, but how do you get a good fight?
I'm with you. I think getting the fight is very tough, but I think he's done a great job at actually chokeholding this economy. You mentioned that he's rich, and I think that's the big story here for Stats, is that he has a ton of Stargate production. He has a ton of gateways. And if he does lose a bunch of units, he can remake enough to potentially come back. Like, DRG has sub 1,000 gas in the bank at the moment. His gas mining nowhere near as good as the Protoss's at the current moment here. With Stats having potentially top left as a nexus as well, and having just denied that hatchery at 10 o'clock as well. But there's an engagement coming in for the Protoss. Bit of a concave of carriers on the left side, the right side, the Immortals and the Archons killing the Ultras.
I really don't. I mean, even though DongRaeGu just lost a whole bunch of supply, wow, for some reason, Stats is actually kind of breaking this. There is a Parasitic Bomb dealing a lot of damage, though. The Infestors are taking over a couple of the units as well, but the Immortals and Archons are still going strong on the ground. Oh my goodness.
And I like that he's throwing in some Stalkers here, just whatever he needs to get rid of those Corruptors. The Corruptors are the only thing keeping DRG alive right now. The Archon's turning and fighting as well. How many carriers can he get? The answer is not enough. Stats has cracked DRG with an engagement that wasn't supposed to go his way, but it ended up going his way after all. And now DRG on the back foot.
That is insane. Now, there's a lot of Zerglings being produced, and they're obviously going to be good against the Stalkers. One more carrier does bite the dust, but look at that Warp Prism. We're going to get a whole bunch of additional Archons being wiped in. 6 Ultras, Maynard. Can that save the day?
Maybe, if they can get the Stalkers pinned up against the wall, get the Archons separated from the pack, maybe, but doesn't look like that's going to be the case. Stats ties it up 1 apiece, a 25-minute PVZ, and he really did a beautiful job at just stifling the economy of the Zerg there and taking the trades that he needed to take.
I can't believe he just ran into all the spores, all the lurkers, and he didn't just sort of win the fight. He crushed it. He completely dominated. Yeah. Very well done. That means that we are getting a game 3 after this quick commercial break.
G'day, StarCraft fans. Welcome back to DreamHack Masters Fall Season Finals. We are in the midst of the middle of the series here. We're going to Game 3 of the second match from Group B. It is Stats versus DRG. One map to decide who's going to go on to the winner's match against Reina to see who advances out of Group B in the first place. And of course, the loser will have to try their best luck in the loser's match coming up. This is an exciting moment here, a tense one. It's very, very hard to call who actually wins this Game 3 as well as we go to Pillars of Gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Because in that second game, I really felt that, all right, Stats is weathered the storm. He survives against all the roaches and hydras. He's up in economy. And then all of a sudden, it feels that we get into the kind of games where it feels that Zerg almost always wins. And then all of a sudden, he's like, no, nothing to worry about. Perfect engagement coming in from, well, almost 180 degrees, what it felt like. And he gets the W. A really fun, exciting Game 2. Let's see what Game 3 brings us. In the bottom left side, we're looking at the main base of the Korean Zerg player. It is DongRaeGu.
That's right. It's the Dong himself going up against this fine gentleman in the top right with a lovely game 2. This is a Freak of Freak stats.
I really wonder how that fight went so good for him. Like, he did have a beautiful spread on his ground units on the right side and some of them coming in on the top side as well. But it still felt that was almost unbreakable, right? So many lurkers, so many spore crawlers to help out as well. Maybe the Corruptors were a bit indecisive and they didn't really do a good job in protecting the lurkers, but like maybe Stats could have won that fight, but I never expected him to win it as convincingly as he did.
Well, I just checked my Twitch page there, and Pig is not live yet analyzing that replay, but no doubt he will be soon. And I would love to get his thoughts on it as well, because I'm with you. Like, it was a hard one to call. I think maybe with my scrublet little noob brain, I did see the Ultras kind of not be useful at all. Like, they died so fast on the right side. That's where the Archons and the Immortals were, and the High Templar as well. One High Templar came from downtown, the middle of the map, gets some, I mean, he definitely landed some great storms, but the real question in my brain is what happened on the left side of that engagement, the Corruptors and the Hydras? It felt like the carriers weren't meant to win that one. And maybe the carrier interceptor count was higher than I thought. Maybe the upgrades mattered more than I thought. I mean, there was 333 on those interceptors. So, yeah.
I mean,
bit of a weird one.
Yeah, the Corruptors were definitely a bit indecisive, right? They were trying to avoid storms, which makes sense, but they also still just need to get in there. Because if the Lurkers and Spore Crawlers are being attacked by literally everything, then the Corruptors need to do their job, and they need to participate in the battle. And flying away from everything, that obviously doesn't help much at that point, but yeah, once again, Stats winning that fight, maybe. It seemed difficult, but maybe. But him winning it as convincingly as he did, I mean, it must have been a bit of both. Stats obviously doing a fantastic job in target firing, landing great storms, spreading out the units on the ground. But I think DongRaeGu definitely messed up a bit there as well.
Yeah, you see an engagement like that happening, it's like watching a truck driving towards a building, and you're like, oh God, like, how's this going to go? And then all of a sudden the truck just makes it through the building collapses, and the truck's got barely a scratch on it. And it's like, I saw that going differently in my mind's eye. I kind of felt like the truck would be a pancake there, but there you go. You know, some stranger things have happened.
It was Dwayne The Rock Johnson driving that truck.
I like the idea of Dwayne The Rock Johnson being in a car and all of a sudden the car becomes invulnerable. That's an amazing thought pattern for sure.
All right, it is going to be Stargate one more time. So it's quite fun actually to see an entire best of 3 not opening up with the Resonating Glaive at depths. And yeah, once more, Stats is going to open up with that safety Void Ray. It is almost at this point. It's a bit similar to the Bolt Viking in a way, no?
Yeah. And it feels like almost old school in a sense, because I remember back when Protosses used to go Nexus first against Zerg. This was kind of your way of getting rid of Overlords. It wasn't about the Phoenix. It was about getting that Void Ray first.
Yep, but obviously Void Rays used to be a bit more expensive, took a lot of supply, took a long time to build as well. Since all of that has changed, it's just a little bit easier to justify investing in a single Void Ray, and then your Oracles will still show up at a very reasonable time as well. I am happy to see that Stats is not going full Void Ray memes on us, because as cool as I think they are, and you can definitely hit some weird timings. I think in an important best of 3 like this, I don't know if just building like a ridiculous amount of Void Rays really would have been the way here in Game 3.
Yeah, no, I think that Stats has got a certain way that he likes to play this matchup, and deviating and getting weird in Game 3, I feel like would be a mistake. If I was a coach, I'd give him a slap on the wrist with my ruler if I saw him dropping 3 Stargates and a Fleet Beacon at the beginning of the game.
I mean, I'd give him a chocolate, but I don't know if he would actually be able
Yeah. So far, Stats getting a nice quick third here. Got that nest already for the Adepts, and DRG's making quite a few lings. Looks like he wants to put on a bit of pressure, at least be safe, but yeah.
I'm really confused about these links. Like, sure, there were 3 Adepts, and maybe he's worried that Stats somehow warps in like 2-3 more Adepts, and then all of a sudden it's like 6 Adepts, right? And then even if without Resonating Glaives, I think that's a bit problematic to deal with. But these links, they will never get a cancel on that Nexus. That's just not possible. Running into the Natural is definitely not an option either, with the 2 Sentries there, the Shield Battery, the Adept. So maybe it's not the biggest of deals, because if you take a look at the mineral lines, they're pretty well saturated at this point. But it's obviously not ideal for the Zerg economy.
Yeah, not 100% here as the extra gases go down now for DRG. Up to 5 total. Roach Warren, Lair halfway done. Void Rage is still doing its thing, trying to hunt down Overlords. And now actually being used for creep clearing. Huh.
It's something. It ain't much, but it's honest work.
Yeah. And those laser beams, they get work done these days. You mentioned it's cheaper, it builds quicker. It's also just a little bit quicker in general. It's a fast unit now. Look at that thing go.
It's so fast, man. I can barely keep up with it.
That's right. Neither can Zerg, if you ask them.
Stats is gonna make a War Prism once again, and there's a Templar Archive. So this could be a bit similar to what we saw in Everdream, where we just see 2 Archons hop inside of that Prism, and yeah, that actually achieved a bit, right? Last game, got a Sport Crawler, got a Queen, almost got the second Queen, I believe a Creep Tour here and there as well. And it's just nice to be out on the map and have some map presence.
It is indeed, and I think Stats has got one of those if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situations where he's like, this really worked out for me in game 2. And I felt like I really had the better, I mean, 100%. It's not just feel like, but he definitely had the better early mid game. Like, he was super far ahead against DRG. Nice positioning on this Queen, though. Just got to get that stasis forward without losing anything.
Yep. That's a good way to deal with it. But even then, I still feel that these stasis traps, it's not a bad idea as long as the Oracle stays alive. That's a bit of lost mining time. DongRaeGu's economy, you know, stops for a little bit. And obviously, at this point, there's 68 workers against 68. That's obviously a lovely spot to be in. Now, with this hatchery finishing up, DongRaeGu is going to try to saturate this mineral line as quickly as possible. But at this point, once again, it definitely doesn't look bad for Stats. And I feel like that has kind of been the entire tone of this best of 3 so far.
Yeah, always looks good for Stats, and then he either wins or loses later. It's been a very similar compositionally for both players. They've been using those, you know, the late game armies, and it's been Hydra, Lurker, Viper against a guy with these mothership, with these carriers, with his ground pound army of Archon Templar. This time DRG going for the Spire a lot faster, so he is adjusting here with Stats playing very, very much the same as game 2.
Yeah, and I actually kind of like that, especially because this time it's charged before Blink, so then Blink Stalkers won't be able to help out. But these force fields have been pretty decent. That's a lot of roaches, though. I don't know if Stats really wants to stick around. If I was Stats, I would disengage here and at least try to keep my key units alive, because, I mean, these Zealots, they just don't really stand a chance. Now, I don't know how much Stats has seen. He definitely didn't see the Spire. And the last time he scouted has been a while ago. I hope he doesn't go in autopilot mode and just automatically assumes that this is once again going to be Infestation Pit Hydralist then, because this is the complete opposite.
He does seem hyper-focused on defending against this small contingent of, well, it's not really that small, but a cluster of Road Ravager here. Like the Oracle's here with the Void Ray. Does that Oracle need to be here? I mean, I know Protosses with that new, you know, the change to the Revelation, just want to keep that Oracle on the army that they see, drop Revelations over and over again, make sure he doesn't get caught by a run-by. Here comes the Prism dropping off some Zealots, but it's leaving here, so he's still not going to know about the Spire. DRG is banking a ton of gas right now.
Yeah, but you gotta ask yourself, if you're Stats right now, you're like, wait a minute, like, if he's even taking his 7th and his 8th gas, what is he doing with all that gas? Why do I only see Zerglings, Roaches, and a handful of Ravagers? That doesn't make any sense, and I think because of that, Stats is now, I want to say, getting a whole bunch of cannons, but to be fair, he got those cannons in previous games as well. But he does already have a cannon and a battery in his main base mineral line as well. So Maynard, even though he didn't confirm it, I feel like he kind of knows that it's coming. I mean, it's so many static defenses. The problem is his anti-air is just not mobile at all. I'm very worried for Stats, actually. Very worried.
Yeah, I think these 16 meters might actually win the game straight up for DRG. Like, he doesn't seem very prepared at all. And also with DRG heading towards Hydra Den and Infestation Pit, he can go play a tech shift bingo here. The High Templar not with quite enough energy for Storms, though. They don't assist. They die to the army, so a good start to this fight for DRG, even putting aside the meters, which are about to reach the Protoss side of the map on the right side.
I feel like the best thing about all of this for DongRaeGu is that he's keeping Stats busy, right? Like, whenever you go into this many meters, now there is a Fleet Beacon, now there is a second Stargate, but that one cannon in the main base, I think, is going to have a tough time. Actually, it's double cannon.
Wow.
And a shield
and at the 4.
Yeah. The biggest problem is
cannons
that
in the 4th base something up as well.
Yeah. The thing is, these Stalkers don't have Blink, though, Maynard, so I still feel like it's going to be hard. I'd love to see DongRaeGu produce Mutas non-stop for a while, and I actually think that he should be able to find the openings he's looking for if that Muta count just goes up a little bit more.
Well, with Fleet Beacon and multiple Stargates, obviously you can spam out those Phoenixes and really shut down these mutas really super hard. And he's starting to make 1 or 2 here. I feel like he's actually handling his mutas pretty well. Obviously, the Void Ray is an expensive pick-off. He got some of the static defense there, but the mutas haven't found, like, you know, 15, 20 probes that I'm sure DRG was hoping for.
Yeah, not yet. To be fair to DongRaeGu, there were also like cannons just everywhere and shield batteries as well. Now 3 Phoenixes and any Impulse Crystals on the way at the same time. I feel like the mutas are kind of on the clock. I still think they're going to be very useful in the next 30 to 45 seconds, but you don't want to let stats get up to like 7, 8 Phoenixes with any Impulse Crystals, because then all of a sudden these mutas are going to have a very difficult time in finding damage.
Now, these High Templar definitely do have a lot of energy for Storms here. Looks like multiple Storms there for this High Templar. The Phoenix is just scooting and shooting there against those mutas, which have been tagged. Any Unpulsed Crystals, 2/3 of the way done. As is Hive, though. Once again, Tech Shift Bingo will be happening here for DRG. He's going to be heading into Lurkers shortly enough, but until that point, Stats is still reacting very well.
Yep, this is actually a really sick play by Stats. Obviously, every second that goes by is good. Now the High Templars are being exposed on the right side. At the same time, the mutas could potentially try to go for the main one more time. That's still a lot of roaches and ravages on the ground as well, Maynard, but the static defenses do a fantastic job in at least buying time.
Stats is just unbreakable here. DRG is finding a little bit of damage, but it's mainly minerals. The army is still quite powerful from Stats. He's a little bit low in army supply versus DRG, of course, but it feels like his composition is like directly meant to counter that of DRG's. Like he's got the Phoenixes for the mutas, he's got the Storms, and he's got the Archons and the Charge Lots, etc. for the ground army, which have been doing a great job trading.
It's really funny because the mutas check almost everywhere other than the natural, and I feel like the natural is where they really would have found a lot of success against an army where there were no Blink Stalkers and there weren't really that many Archons. There wasn't just that much anti-air, especially not mobile anti-air. But they didn't check. They checked the other 3 bases where there were a lot of cannons, there were a lot of batteries, and those really bought the time that Stats needed to get a proper answer against these mutas. But at this point, Maynard, it's not so much about the mutas anymore. We do have Lurkers on the way in the near future. But Stats is already getting carriers, so I guess we're just in for another beautiful long game.
Hell yeah, late game PvZ, sign me up every time. I love to see it. I mean, the Lurkers are still very scary, but once again, just like Game 2, it feels like Stats is a little bit ahead in preparing with them. He's not wanting to drop that overcharged shield battery. He just wants that Archon to get juiced up au natural here by those shield batteries.
It's interesting to see how DongRaeGu, his drone count in general, is just quite a bit lower than the drone count of the European Zergs, no? It's like 73.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Raynor in the 90s. I think DRG on Eternal was a lot higher. But yeah, oh, this is a nice Zealot run-by. Zealot run-bys is something we haven't been seeing a lot in this series, actually. Because DRG's been actually just affecting them so hard.
Yep, and the Zealot run-by actually kind of distracted DongRaeGu, and he left his Lurkers behind, so he was forced to cancel all of his morphing Hydras into Lurkers, and a couple of them got lifted as well by these Phoenixes.
Mothership's actually useful! Cloaks are babies. The mutas show up, and there's no detection here for them. They just get minced by the Carrier's Interceptors.
Now they go into the natural. When there are 2 mutas left, DongRaeGu's like, oh, that's where I should have been all along. It's like, yes, that was the spot.
Yeah. Close but no cigar for those mutas. And now DRG's army is kind of been reset here, and he has to shift completely with his supply. I mean, the good thing is that he has the money to do that, but now he doesn't. Now that he's made that army, there is not really a bank for DRG anymore, and he's max. So is the Protoss, which is very dangerous for the Zerg, because there's carriers here, there's Storm here, there's energy, there's spellcasters for the Protoss. There's no spellcasters yet for the Zerg, I don't think. I don't think he has any Vipers. No, he doesn't. Not yet. Ooh, that's a scary army, though.
Yeah, it shows up at the right time. The Hydra count is not that high, though. At this point, just a whole bunch of them pops, and now we've got 34 Hydras. But the Hydras that are here on the right side, I honestly don't think that would be enough to fight all these carriers, especially not because the carriers do already have +1. Once again, love to see him start +2 a little bit quicker. But DongRaeGu was sitting on 3k minerals, 1500 gas a while ago. He is completely broke at this point. So it's actually in his favor if this game just kind of drags on, right? I don't think he should really go pedal to the metal here and fight in range of potentially static defenses and a whole lot of reinforcements, because he cannot afford, he cannot replace these units, but he does find a whole bunch of probes here, Maynard.
Yeah, huge probe transfer getting picked off there for sure, but the bank is already here for Stats, so it feels like the damage is already done. High Templar getting those stalls from downtown. These Hydras are really stopping up, and if they die, there is nothing protecting these Lurkers. They've only just got their burrow upgrade here, but I feel like it's a little bit too little too late. Stats collapsing through this army of DRG and really resetting it. The double spire coming down, but no bank, no money at all to get a corrupt account out to deal with these carriers.
Nope, I mean, DongRaeGu immediately remade 13 Hydras as he lost a whole bunch of them in that previous fight. In a way, though, that may have kept Stats on his side of the map for a little while longer. And that's just important, because time is really the problem at this point for DongRaeGu. He needs to get a better army eventually. He cannot really keep trading non-stop. That's the style you play with 92 drones, but not with 70. Even though he got up to 80 at this point. I don't really know if him being here is the right idea, Maynard.
Yeah, and I'm not sure either. This is such a precarious moment here for DRG. He's got to take a really good fight here, and it seems unlikely at the moment. Hydra count certainly is high again. He's close to having +3 attack, and that's great. Stats once again a little bit late on +2 attack on the ship weapons, or ship upgrades in general.
Yeah.
But his army's just so much better at the moment, I feel. The Protoss' army, that is.
Yep, and even if he's a bit out of position, it's not the end of the world for Stats because he's got static defenses everywhere, right? And that just always buys him like 10, 15 seconds. Look at these storms on the top side of the map. You can see the Hydras at bay. Even the Overlords are taking a lot of damage there, the Overseers rather, and the Lurk is already pretty beat up. And this is just the time that Stats needs as well to get the rest of his army in position. Even a couple of Phoenixes will just sweep in and clear the remaining Hydras. But it's crazy to see how YOLO DongRaeGu is playing. Now, he's playing like he's rich, and then all of that makes sense. But Maynard, he doesn't have a penny in the bank, and he's not even maxed out.
Yeah. I think DRG is used to being richer than God at 16.5 minutes into his EVP, but that's definitely not the case. I think you're absolutely right. You've nailed it. He's playing like a rich boy, and he's unfortunately a little bit pauper Zerg at the moment. He just doesn't have anything going for him. He's shaking his 10. He's hoping for free change. Like he's getting +2 attack for 0 corruptors. Like +2 attack just finished. He has no A units.
Yeah, that's the stuff you do when you're sitting on 3K, 3K. I mean, once again, he does find his base. That's a little bit exposed. This time, static defense won't buy that much time. And the fact that Stats is turning around is actually great news for DongRaeGu, because Stats is army Maynard. 143 supply of Storm and Carriers +2. I don't see a way that DongRaeGu takes that. Yeah, if Stats is playing a ring around the rosy and it's just kind of like running around, not committing to a fight, maybe DongRaeGu can buy enough time for himself. If they fight, I still believe that Stats' army is just way, way better.
I agree with you 100%. I think that DRG's in a ton of trouble if they actually engage. Let's have a look at this fight here. DRG's actually Overseer is out of position. There's only one Overseer as well. Mothership with this army, lots of energy on the High Templar. Phoenixes are useful, but not as useful, obviously, as having more Corruptors here, or rather more Carriers, more High Templar. Stats is being so painfully patient. I really wish he was a little bit more YOLO. Like, he actually should be more YOLO. Like, take a page out of DRG's book. Yeah. Go across the map and kill him.
I mean, look at the army difference at this point. 131 supply against 98. The army of Stats is 2.5 times as expensive as the army as DongRaeGu has out on the map at this point. Now, DongRaeGu is going to try to make his army a bit better. There are Vipers on the way. Obviously, it takes a while before they really have all the energy they need. I almost feel the only thing that can really hurt Stats is if he kills all his own interceptors with Storm, which is stuff that does happen sometimes. But Maynard, here we go.
Those storms are absolutely sick. Stats is collapsing through DRG's defenses. Even the drone's getting a little bit of that bad weather. The Zerg pressed up against the side of the wall there, and Stats takes the series with 2